Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today for a very special Rockjumper webinar. We are excited to announce that this week we'll be holding our 20th virtual tour in our Dream Destination series, venturing to the fascinating country of Japan. Japan has an extremely rich history and unique culture, which is captivating to delve into. And from a birding perspective, it is famous for its spectacular winter gathering of dancing cranes together with other desirable species. I'm Nikki Stewart, together with my co-host Keith Valentine, and we both enjoy engaging with you, so please send us your questions, comments, or say hi in the Q&A or chat at the bottom of your screen, and we will try to answer as many as we can. Before we hand over to our Rockjumper tour leader, professional ecologist and wildlife photographer, Stu Elsom, we would like to give a special shout out to Nancy, Eva, Jean, and Susan. Thank you for attending all 20 live webinars. We are honored that you have kept us company each and every week. Keith and I love numbers, and since starting the series, Rockjumper has had over 10,000 Zoom registrants and over 13,000 views, live and recorded views. Thank you to everyone for joining our incredibly talented tour leaders on their fascinating adventures. Speaking of talented, Stu Elsom has been a keen naturalist from an early age. His passion for wildlife conservation has seen him serve on several regional environmental and conservation forums, and he is a former chairman of his local bird club. Stu's photographic birding tours offer technical insights and techniques that significantly adds to your touring experience. Welcome, Stu. We are looking forward to going to Japan today.
Okay, well, thank you, Nikki and Keith, for the introduction. So yeah, I'm Stu Elsom. I'm based in a tiny little Cambridgeshire village called Ellington, and surprise, surprise, it's raining hard outside. So enough of the weather, and let's take you to Japan. So it's effectively 3 holidays in one trip. By that, I mean that you've got the extremes of weather of really cold subarctic conditions in the north to more temperate conditions around the Tokyo area. And then once you get into the south of Japan, it's a lot milder, subtropical. So as you can see from the graphic, Japan sits in the Pacific Ocean and to the east of the mainland China and Russia. Now you'll see the little Rockjumper has just appeared on the screen. He's going to be our guide through the trip. So when I do the itinerary, just look where the Rockjumper takes you, and that'll be nice and easy to follow. So a typical birding itinerary from Japan will be flying into Tokyo, where the Rockjumper is showing us now, and then heading up to the North Island of Hokkaido, which is where we've got spectacular cranes, eagles, sea ducks, the fish owl, lots of really iconic, spectacular species up there. And then we'll head back down to Tokyo, and then we'll head out to Nagano and Karuizawa, which is in the Japanese Alps. So that'll be, again, a snowy, scenic area, but not quite as cold as Hokkaido. Once we've done a few days there, we'll come back to Tokyo, and then we'll move on to the south of Japan, to Kyushu, the southernmost of the main islands. And after we've birded Kyushu, back to Tokyo, surprise, surprise. And then we'll go down to the southern islands on the extension, where we'll start in Amami, and then we'll move down to Okinawa. And as I say, the climate down here is subtropical, nice and warm, shorts and t-shirt and sandals. quite different to what awaits us in Hokkaido. Okay, so let's start our trip. So some facts and figures for you for Japan. You can see the total area there is just under 150,000 square miles, but being sort of banana shape, people don't realize just how long the island is. It's just under 2,000 miles long. Japan is made up of nearly 7,000 islands, and on the trip we will visit about 6 of them. You can see that in the population, with regards to the population, 126 million, which is roughly twice the size of the UK, and with regard to its rank in population density, it's the 24th most densely populated country in the world, with the 2nd highest life expectancy. With regard to the birds, over 700 species have been recorded in Japan, and that includes quite a few North American species, and just over 250 species breed, and that includes just 17 endemics. It also includes about 30 species which over the years have been introduced by man. So there's several species from Southeast Asia like red-billed leothrix, which are now breeding wild in Japan, but as a result of human intervention. And on a typical birding trip, I would expect to see about 150 to 170 species, weather dependent and luck dependent, really. So as you can see, Japan, it's normal to drive on the left. So for those of you joining us from the UK, that's nice and easy. And also you'll see the signpost there is bilingual. So you've got the Japanese scripture, but you've also got English subtitles. So nice and easy. If you prefer to take public transport, you've got the Shinkansen or bullet train, which is very, very impressive. And as you can see from the timetable on the right, all of the important information is in English. You can see the car number, you can see the platform, and you can see the time. And Japan wouldn't be Japan without techno toilets. First time I went to Japan about 11 years ago, I was quite taken with all of the buttons on the left-hand side, and it leaves nothing to the imagination. So we'll start off in Tokyo, the capital of Japan, and the first site that we'll visit is the Kasai Rinkai Park. This is actually situated on the bay of Tokyo, so you can see the metropolis of Tokyo in the distance. But out here in the bay, you've got large numbers of wintering sea duck, and these are mostly greater scaup, but also in the photograph, there's the odd great crested grebe and either black scoter or Stener's scoter, but large numbers of birds in the harbour. There's some close-up of the greater scaup. You can see the nice rounded head and the vermiculations on the mantle. There's also eared grebe or black-necked grebe. You can see the nice bright red iris. And there's also some nice woodland habitat at Kasai Rinkai. Brown-eared bulbul is the first of the Japanese endemics we'll see. And there's also good numbers of oriental turtle dove and eastern spot-billed duck with the nice black and yellow on the bill. And from a Western perspective, dusky thrush, a very, very exciting vagrant to Europe, with probably only a handful of British records. So any British bird watchers visiting Japan, dusky thrush, being the mega rarity that it is in the UK and Europe, is one of those really wow species that you just want to see. But we'll see more later. And also we've got a close relative of the dusky thrush, the pale thrush. These are a little bit more secretive, feeding in leaf litter. And large numbers of overwintering olive-back pipits here. So, as I said in the introduction, we're going to do a typical birding trip. So I'll take you up to Hokkaido. There's the little Rockjumper. We're now up in Kushiro, which is the airport in the east of Hokkaido. And as soon as you land, you come out of the airport, you can see just how revered and respected the wildlife is, with this pair of Japanese or red-crowned cranes as part of the welcome sign to Kushiro Airport. When you get out of the airport, you see the total change in climate, temperature, and landscape. This is leaving Kushiro and traveling east. And you can see, compared to Tokyo, this is a much more dramatic landscape. And it's quite fitting that so many iconic species have such a wonderful landscape. As we drive along, we'll see our first red-crowned or Japanese cranes by the roadside. And this is, definitely you'll see lots in Japan, but certainly the first one that you see, the bus quickly stops, everybody piles off the bus, and wow, red-crowned crane, look at these. And the light is fantastic in Hokkaido. Beautiful, clean images, nice clean air, really crisp. So these are called Japanese or red-crowned crane. And there you can see the duetting. You could just imagine the trumpeting calls. And you can see why the other name is red-crowned crane. This is an adult showing the nice bright red forecrown. But also up here in the north, you've got lots of northern subspecies. So this is the nominate form of long-tailed tit, northern long-tailed tit, with the striking white head. Looks very, very different to the white head, to the long-tailed tits that we might get in Western Europe. And we'll work our way up to Lake Kushiro, which is a lake which is on the edge of hot springs. So you can see in the foreground of the photograph there, you've got an area which has got no snow at all. So the hot spring runs underneath there, thus providing the water for the swans, hooper swans, to rest in and bathe in. And you can see the steam coming off the water, which is the heat from the hot springs. Still a bitterly cold day here. So, being a hooper swan, plenty of warmth, plenty of insulation. Even they get cold occasionally. And here's a nice adult tucking its head under its wing. And there's the close-up of the yellow eye-ring and the yellow on the bill. So lots of iconic species to admire in Hokkaido. Now, in Japan, the dining experience is a massive part of the culture. And this is a typical dining area for the group. You can see all the places very neatly laid out, and the tatami matting. Here's a typical evening meal. So it's beautifully presented, lots of the individual dishes. And then you've got your ceramic pot off to the left and right, which will have your rice and either a meat dish, a fish dish. But you've got all the constituent parts there of a very, very tasty and wholesome meal. And this was my first visit to Japan in 2009, when I was joined by, some of you may know, Brian Bland, Pete Milford and Phil Yates. And we thought that it's not compulsory, but we thought we'd play our part and make the effort to dress for dinner. It's not compulsory, but this is definitely compulsory. Dressing for winter birding. Sometimes in Hokkaido, with the wind chill, you can be looking at temperatures of -25, -30. So yes, that is me under there, trying to keep warm. Our first morning birding in Hokkaido, in the local area to the hotel, we should see white-tailed eagles perched up. And the first views of white-tailed eagle and Steller sea eagle on the shoreline. But they are a bit distant. We want to get closer than that. So we'll move into the harbours and we'll have a look there. This is harlequin duck, also found in North America, northern North America. This is a female, which you know, still rather an attractive duck, but the male is absolutely one of the most spectacular ducks in the world. Beautiful male harlequin duck. And later that morning, we'll take a boat trip out into the Gulf of Raus, which is off the eastern side of Hokkaido, adjacent to the Kuril Islands. And this is where you can get absolutely incredible views of species only less than a mile from the harbour. So this is an adult glaucous-winged gull. And the first nice fly past of white-tailed eagle. So this is an immature bird, probably a second year. And the first Stellers. Now, I must tell you that it was actually a boyhood fascination with Steller sea eagle that took me to Japan for the first time, because I decided for my 40th birthday with my birding mate, Richard Patient, that I wanted to see Steller sea eagle. So for my 40th birthday, Richard and I treated ourselves and we went to Japan. So, of course, leading tours there since, I'm lucky enough to see Steller sea eagle relatively frequently, but every time you see them, they are absolutely jaw-dropping. They are a huge bird of prey, massively impressive, and you can see it there just gliding over the harbour. Massive bill, really big bird. And Hokkaido allows you to get so close to Steller sea eagle. It's a really majestic looking raptor. And there you can see the size of those talons. You wouldn't want to argue with him. And, you know, white-tailed eagle is considered a large bird of prey in European terms. But to give you an idea, that's a white-tailed eagle on the right, an immature bird, and adult Stellers on the left. So you just see the size of the bill, absolutely incredible. Also here, we've got slaty-backed gull, which is another North Arctic gull, and black scoter, which is the North American and East Siberian form of common scoter. You can see the all yellow knob on the bill. As we work our way through Hokkaido, we'll go out to various harbours and peninsulas. This is the Notsuka Peninsula, which is a hook-shaped spit which goes right down into the sea, and really good views of birds there. You've got offshore, you've got glaucous gulls on the ice floes. And if you search carefully amongst the tide rack, Asian rosy finch often reveal themselves. A really beautiful little finch. Can be tricky to find, but we normally persevere and we see them. And also here the Izu or Izo red fox. So this is the northern form of the familiar red fox in Eurasia and North America. And also, I have to say, Hokkaido has probably produced what I think is the best combination for a sandwich ever. Strawberries, custard and whipped cream sandwiches. So when I came back from Japan before, I thought, well, I've got to make these at home. So birding the area around the hotel. The snow has been cleared overnight by the snow plows, and we have brants or Eurasian jay. You can see that the Japanese birds, the facial pattern is quite different from those in Europe, and also the grey tone on the back makes it look quite a different bird. We also have the Japonica, the paler race of Uralao in northern Japan, and the diminutive Japanese pygmy woodpecker. Beautiful little bird. The nuthatches also look quite different here. So they have the gleaming white underparts, which actually makes them look very striking, whereas the birds in Europe and Western Asia would have more buffy or reddish toned underparts. So these do look very striking. So our final evening on Hokkaido, we're all prepared for a wonderful dinner. Everything's laid out, perfect. All of a sudden, we're interrupted by Blakiston's fish owl, which has come into the pool outside the dining area. So there we are in the warm, ready for food. And then we've got one of the most stunning owl species, certainly the largest owl in the world, about 20 feet away in the pools outside in the snow. A great way to finish the trip in Hokkaido. So you can see there, he's gone in, he's got his fish, and then he'll drift off into the forest. Okay, so from Hokkaido, we're going to go south. As I said, there's the little Rockjumper down to Honshu. So we're now in the central part of the main island of Japan. And the first site there is Karuizawa. And that's got to be one of the best places to catch up with Japanese waxwing. So you can see the red on the undertail coverts, the red on the wings, and the red tail tip, all key distinctions from Eurasian or Bohemian waxwing. Also here, mandarin duck can be found on fast-flowing streams. And grey-capped or oriental greenfinch. Varied tit is also a very smart, very dapper little resident around this area, and quite often comes to feeders. We'll also work our way out to some wetlands where the target species is Baikal teal, so that's a drake in the centre, with Eurasian teal behind and left, and then immediately to the right of the Baikal teal are male and female northern pintail. So once we've finished in that area, we'll work our way over to Jigokudani, or as it's also known, the Monkey Park. And this is also set high in the Japanese Alps, in a beautiful, spectacular setting right up in the mountains, where you've got fast-flowing streams, deep snow, I mean, beautiful valleys, great views, great place. But these guys have got to be seen to be believed. These are the Japanese macaques or snow monkeys. And over the years, I've had some great views of these things. I mean, they're just so photogenic. Absolutely wonderful. I think the guy on the left has been in the wars a bit. You can see how red their faces are from the heat in the water. And these two youngsters were very, very photogenic. A bit of mutual grooming there. And occasionally you'll get one that sort of comes and sits on a post and says, take my photograph, oh, go on. So, you know, you frame up, you get him in the frame, you think, yeah, that looks nice. And then he becomes a bit more shy. And then he tells you, nah, that's enough. And then you get the opposite, where this guy is actually making a snowball. He's about to throw a snowball. Also up here in the Japanese Alps, you've got Alpina Center of the Japanese subspecies Erythropigia. So once we've finished in the Japanese Alps, we'll go back to Tokyo and we'll bird the Imperial Palace. Now this is the edge of Tokyo City. You can see all the commercial buildings and a few trees on that side of the road. And then just crossing the road takes you into the grounds of the Imperial Palace, which is immaculate, beautifully kept grounds, wonderful habitat. A great place to see falcated duck. Here's a drake on the edge of the moat. And these are really, really spectacular duck. And one of the species you can't miss at the Imperial Palace, Dorian redstart. Beautiful orange rump there. And also azure-winged magpie, a noisy but attractive resident of the areas around the palace grounds, no doubt attracted by people dropping food, as is this guy, the Oriental crow. And you can see how much thicker the bill is than either Eurasian or American crow. These are actually more closely related to ravens, so a really substantial bill. Also here you've got pale thrush in the leaf litter, but as I said earlier, a lot of people want to see dusky thrush when they come to Japan, and what better than a nice adult male hopping around in the grounds. Absolutely superb. Surely one of the most attractive thrushes. So from Tokyo, we'll head down to the southernmost of the main islands, Kyushu, and we'll visit the east and the west coast. We'll head out to Hyuga, which is on the east coast of the southern island. And the first bird that we'll see around the harbour area is the red-bellied rock thrush. Now this is treated either as a subspecies of blue rock thrush or a species in its own right. But you can see there, compared to the birds in Europe and Asia, the red belly is very, very distinctive. And then we'll take a boat trip out into the Gulf of Hyuga, and we'll look for a very, very special bird. It's only found on the east coast of Japan, and this is Japanese murrelet. And I'm very grateful to Dennis Brady for these pictures. Absolutely wonderful. Far better than the ones I've got of the species. And then we'll head back west to Lake Miike, which is a volcanic lake. And there's lots of species around there to keep us busy. This is Japanese pygmy woodpecker and Ryukyu minivet. And also the first bunting of the trip, normally Siberian or just meadow bunting. Very, very attractive bunting with a really striking facial pattern, and Mordorian redstarts. These are so photogenic. They all want to have their photograph taken. And if we're really lucky, a nice male red-flanked bluetail. One of the most spectacular buntings around here is the yellow-throated bunting, and they tend to be found up on the higher passes around Ibino and Miike. And if we're really lucky, we'll get a flyover Japanese hawk eagle, recently split from mountain hawk eagle. One of the most elusive but striking birds here is the Japanese grosbeak. They're very quiet, they're very unassuming, but when you do find one, you can see that bill is absolutely enormous. These are about the same size as a hawfinch. So really quite an obvious bird, but can be quite difficult to find. And another bunting, rustic bunting, thanks to David Hodinott for this one. And then we'll move across to the east coast of the southernmost island, to Arasaki. On the way, we'll stop at the Yatsushiro estuary and look for the beautiful Saunders gull. So there's a summer plumage adult in the bottom half of the picture. There's also their Vega gull on the right and Eurasian curlew at the top there. And when you get to Arasaki, it's fair to say that it is quite a spectacle. Upwards of 100,000 cranes on a good year. And as you can see, many, many cranes in the photograph. This is feeding time in the morning, where they go out with a wheelbarrow and just put masses of food out for the cranes, because this is such an important overwintering area for them. The most numerous crane here is hooded crane. And you get absolutely marvellous views of hooded cranes, as you do all of the cranes, but hooded is certainly the most numerous. And just focusing in on the main part of the crowd, there can be up to 6 species, sometimes even more if you get a demoiselle crane at Arasaki each winter. Small numbers of sandhill crane from the US and northern North America. also small numbers of common crane from Europe. There's two young sandhill cranes. My favourite crane there is the white-naped crane, very, very elegant, beautifully marked. And they do make very good photographic subjects. Superbly elegant species. Also, one of the species that we don't find elsewhere in Japan, but is quite easy to see on the East Coast, is black-tailed gull. This is a medium-sized gull, very, very striking with the yellow bill and the black tip, but also that really obvious nice tail band. You can see it coming into land there, and you can see there the bicoloured bill. And one of the most sought after species at Arasaki, certainly from a European perspective, is Dorian jackdaw. So we've got a dark morph bird in the middle here with an eastern rook either side. The dark morph birds tend to outnumber the pied birds, which tend to be, for some reason, very elusive. Working our way along the Sendai River, we'll hopefully come across Japanese wagtail, and hopefully crested kingfisher, very, very impressive kingfisher, which is found right up into the Himalayas, and also long-billed plover. Now, this is a species that always is confined to rocky rivers, fast-flowing rivers, and mountain streams. So they can be tricky to find, but the areas in Kyushu offer us the best chance of finding this species. And also on the southern island, black-eared kite, or the lineatus subspecies of black kite is also regarded. They're quite numerous, and you can see there the dark ear covert patch, which gives it its name, a black-eared kite. So a typical trip may end and go back to Tokyo, but on this one, we're going to do the Southern Islands extension. So we're going to work our way down to Okinawa, which is the southernmost of the southernmost islands. And I'm really, really jealous of this photograph because I haven't got a photograph of this species. Thank you, Glenn. This is Okinawa Rail, very, very elusive and absolutely amazing photograph, superb. And Okinawa woodpecker, also a very, very rare species, probably less than 600 individuals of this species in the world. And Ryukyu scops owl is also on Okinawa. Brown-headed thrush, if we haven't bumped into one already, is more regular on Okinawa than the other islands. And then we'll work our way to Amami Oshima, which is the northernmost of the southern islands. One of the most sought after birds is Amami woodcock, and David has excelled himself once again to get a really good photograph of this. And again, an absolutely beautifully marked species, the Lidth's jay, can be quite elusive. The largest of the Zoothera thrushes, Amami thrush, is one of our targets, but we'll finish the southern extension with perhaps one of the most striking birds on the trip, the Amami robin, a recent split from the Ryukyu robin. And that concludes our trip. For those of you interested in the photography, I used Olympus OMD Mark II and the 300 f4. Thank you very much for attending this evening. I hope you've enjoyed it. All of the photographs have been mine, apart from those marked and accredited to other people. And overall, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I really look forward to seeing you in Japan sometime in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stu, for a great presentation. And before we go into Q&A, a quick reminder that in your chat box, I will put the link for the tour leaders GoFundMe donation page. And if you would like to contribute towards our guides during these quiet times, the page remains open. Tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. New York time, we will be hosting another fun and nerdy Rockjumper virtual pub quiz on national birds and internet sensations. If you're interested in joining the link, I have already put that link in your chat box. However, next week's virtual tour is taking us to the southern cone of South America, which lies in an astonishing part of the world, where the snow-covered Andes make an unbelievable backdrop, spectacular glaciers loom proud, and vast lagoons teem with birds. Home of the Andean condor, hooded grebe, puma, and many, many more. This is Patagonia, land of fire and ice. Next week, join Bobby Wilcox for what is sure to be a memorable webinar as he showcases this incredible region in all its splendor. But over to you, Keith and Stu, for Q&A.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Nikki. Thanks, Stu. A wonderful presentation. Yeah, I think you really showcased some of the area's most special birds, and certainly the comments that are coming through, folks really enjoyed what you showcased there. And yeah, the number of different species, and there's loads of great comments coming through over here in the chat box. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your thoughts. Really appreciate it. There's also a lot of questions that are coming through as well, Stu. So I'll get stuck into those right away. Let's have a look over here. So just a quick one. If you're a vegetarian, will the meals be an issue? What are the meals generally like in Japan?
It's quite easy. Yeah, quite easy to have just vegetables in the meals. Yeah. As you saw with the images of the food laid out, you almost construct the meal yourself. So the constituent parts of the meal, but you know, as with all birding trips, we can make arrangements in advance to make sure that we cater for vegans and vegetarians. Certainly been there a number of times and not had any problems. Certainly more straightforward in Japan than other parts of the world.
Excellent. That's great. And the amounts of sort of like raw fish and what have you that you get. I mean, I guess the food, I mean, the culture of Japan's got to be one of the big reasons for visiting as well.
Yeah.
And getting the whole experience too, with the birds and the scenery and what have you. But the food must be quite something as well. I mean, it's very different to the typical Western diet.
Yeah, and I think they realise now that they have to cater for a more Western palate. So it's not unusual to have the first course of raw fish and then toast and marmalade. so the Japanese are very conscious that not everybody can do raw fish first thing in the morning. But I think overall the food is very interesting, very tasty. And certainly if raw fish is not your thing, or as I say, if you want to go a more plant or vegetarian base, not a problem. I mean, what I would say is the fish, just due to you know, Japan's location, the fish does make a huge part of their food. Their overall cuisine is geared more to fish than meat. But you know, having said that, every meal is meticulously prepared and beautifully presented, and I think the dining is a huge part of the experience of the Japanese culture. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think definitely one of the highlights, without a doubt. Moving on to the bird side of things, when do the cranes leave Japan after winter? What sort of date are we looking at for?
There's a good one. I would think probably late March, early April. I've only been to Japan in January and February because obviously that's the time for the maximum number of cranes and also the spectacle of the eagles on the northern side. I would think March, April they'll move out to breed. I have seen photographs of Hokkaido in June, and of course no ice, no snow, just looks so different. So yeah, I'm guessing that they would have all moved out to their breeding grounds end of March, beginning of April. but I don't know that for certain. That's a guess.
Absolutely. Great stuff. So just another one on the temperatures that you were mentioning earlier, Stu. For those that you were giving, I think some people got quite shocked just how cold Hokkaido can actually be in the winter. Were the temperatures that you were mentioning in Celsius or Fahrenheit?
So a typical day in Hokkaido, I would think, is going to be sort of minus 10, something like that. I would think more extreme temperatures, minus 20, but it's always around freezing or below freezing.
Yeah.
So you have to, as I said in the introduction, it's almost packing for 3 holidays. You've got to take lots of layers, be prepared for cold days. Having said that, the accommodation's nice and warm. The vehicles are nice and warm, and the food's really good. So what we try to do is not spend too long out at a time, maybe a couple of hours, and then back in for some hot soup.
Yep.
So yeah, it's always hovering around freezing, but exceptionally it can get down to sort of minus 20.
Right. Yeah. No. Can certainly get cold. And then another one, just whilst we're up at Hokkaido, how reliable is the Blakiston's fish owl? Robert says, splendid photos, by the way. Thanks for the lovely ones of the elegant dinners and striking landscapes, as well as the birds. Yeah,
thank you, Robert.
Captured it really nicely. But that's really is just one of many, many great comments here. But he's also asking, just how reliable is Blakiston's fish owl on the trip?
The fish owl is at 2 main locations. And the main reason that they are so reliable is because the streams are kept free of ice, and they're regularly stocked with fish. I guess you could bump into one if you were in likely habitat, but it's fair to say at the moment that most of the birding trips will be seeing Blakistons at one of those 2 or even both locations. But beyond that, Keith, I guess I've never looked for them elsewhere because we haven't needed to. So it isn't really clear just how easy they are. I think if those two locations for any reason lost their birds, it would be interesting to see how quickly a gettable bird was found, because they are quite secretive. And yeah, I guess population-wise, they've got to be fairly low numbers anyway.
Yeah.
But certainly,
I've always heard that. I mean, supposedly they're quite rare, and the densities are pretty low. So I certainly agree with you there. But as you say, we've got such good, reliable spots that we never really look for them. Into the other areas.
And it's like so many species in the world where you've been going to a site for years. There's one there. You know that they're breeding most years, so that the youngsters are going to stay more or less within that valley. It's only when something untoward happens that you think, okay, where are we going to find them?
Yeah, absolutely.
You certainly don't see many trip reports of people that just sort of bump into them.
Yeah, no, dead right.
So low density.
Yeah. Great stuff. So yeah, keeping with the bird theme itself, George is asking how regularly see copper pheasant on the tour, and if so, where?
Never seen one.
Oh wow.
The place where most people connect with copper pheasant is at Karuizawa, and the forests there are quite dense. And I think, to be fair, a birding trip is only ever going to give you a snapshot of a country. I think if you really wanted to see copper pheasant, you'd probably need to spend, I would think, 2, maybe 3 days birding the forested slopes in Karuizawa to see it. Not easy.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm actually just pulling up, as we speak, I'm just pulling up our trip lists here quickly of all of our past trips. I know Glenn's certainly seen it.
Yeah, I've seen Glenn's photograph of a female.
Yeah. Yeah, I know he's certainly got a pretty decent one. So I'm just checking here what our percentages are. Interesting on our particular. I guess we've got a pretty good site, Stu,
Yeah.
from where we go, because we actually have seen it on every one of our trips.
Okay.
Oh yeah, one of those.
Get me on that trip.
You're right. I guess the guys found a good one way back when they did the reconnaissance trip, and it's been a firm favorite ever since. So yeah, so far I've been 100% record on copper and green pheasants, I see. But yeah, as Stu's saying, though, not easy birds, and I mean, you can never guarantee those pheasants. But yeah, I guess no. Thanks to Keith as well, who's just sent in on the chat. Says all of the food is superb except the fermented beans. So a heads up there for anyone who's planning on going to Japan.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. It's it depends how adventurous you are with your cuisine.
That's it. Yeah, and everyone's got different tastes as well.
Yeah.
Just on to your cameras again. Simon's just asking, please tell me the 2 cameras you use and what lenses.
So the one I've got at the moment is the, well, it's actually here. It's the Olympus OMD Mark II and the 300 f4. And because it's a micro 4/3 sensor, a 300mm becomes effectively 600.
Yeah.
So in the past, I used Canon and had 500mm lenses, but they're not really compatible with leading birding tours. So a more compact rig is much more sensible.
Yeah, for sure. Good stuff. So a few people just asking about the tours themselves and the lengths. Thanks for those questions. So the Southern Islands, I'll just quickly take this, Stu.
Yeah.
So the Southern Islands trip itself is an 8-day tour. So that's just over a week in length. And then the main tours that we do, that we've got a winter tour, which is the one that's Stu specifically focused on with his presentation here this evening. So that's, where you get up into Hokkaido in that cold time of the year, but that's when you get the great species like Stellers around on the ice floats and all those cranes and Blakiston's fish owl and all of those species as well, Japanese murrelets and what have you. So the winter tour itself is 19 days in length. And we also do a spring tour though in May, which is 11 days. So it's shorter. And obviously Japan in spring is pretty spectacular to see. And you can get a bunch of the species and the endemics and what have you. But yeah, there are some of the sort of big highlights that you associate Japan with that are not available in the spring. So it gives you an idea of that one. And then the southern extension we offer as an extension to the winter tour. So that's in February itself when we do it. So I think those were the questions. Yeah, those were a couple of the questions associated on that front. Field guides. Stu, what's your favorite field guide for Japan?
I think the best one, I'll just grab it off the shelf.
Lovely when you're in your own library.
Yep. So the best one is Mark Brazil's Birds of Japan. That's definitely, I think, the best. It's not too heavy. You could take the Birds of East Asia, which is also by Brazil, but it's quite a bit heavier. So yeah, the Helm Field Guide, Birds of Japan, that's my favourite guide.
Excellent. Let's have a look over here. Are there currently restrictions on entry into Japan from the US?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the current situation is with COVID.
Yeah, I'm also not.
I would have thought.
I mean, there's not usually restrictions though, Don.
No.
But yeah, I mean, we could always get the latest information on that front for you, but I don't know off the top of my head actually.
No, I don't know.
Great stuff. And then let's see here. Chances of seeing Japanese green woodpecker.
They can be tricky. Certainly. Karuizawa is probably the easiest place to see them. And I've seen them a couple of times further south. They're never in huge numbers, though. I mean, they are quite sort of fragmented distribution, really. You never see as many Japanese green as any of the other woodpeckers. So
Right.
I wouldn't have said that they are particularly numerous. Certainly Karuizawa would be my main site for them.
Good stuff. And then just back towards the weather side of things, Joe's just asking, how many days of cold weather birding attire do we need to be prepared for if we're doing, this is obviously for the winter trip?
Yes, so you've probably got the itinerary there, Keith. Is it 5 nights in Hokkaido?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's about 5.
Yeah. I think if you're particularly susceptible to the cold, obviously take more layers than you normally would. But as I said before, the birding in the extreme conditions is only a couple of hours at a time. So it's not as if we're going out all day without hot drinks or without hot food. And I think if you can do it a couple of hours at a time, it's far more. You can cope with it much better. Yeah,
I certainly agree with that.
And it's not.
But yeah, that gives you a good idea. But it's really Hokkaido where you're looking at the serious, the cold weather.
And a lot of that is caused by the wind as well. I mean, the wind chill when you're out on the coast. If you've got a day where it's fairly still, it's actually quite pleasant. When the sun comes out, it's just like a normal winter's day in the UK or in Europe. But it's just when you do get northerly winds, obviously they're coming straight off the Arctic. So it can be cold. But for anybody who's interested in going to Japan, I'd recommend the down-filled jacket. I use the RAB jackets, and the down-filled jackets provide incredible barrier of warmth. And then under that, lots of layers, and you should be fine. But then again, I've never suffered the cold. So.
Yeah, but I think those are all good tips there, Stu. Thanks.
Yeah,
that's great. So just touching on, there's a couple that have just come in again here, just about Blakiston's fish owl, about percentages. So again, if you do the winter trip, Blakiston's fish owl, we've got a couple of very good sites for that bird. And it is a 100% bird for us as well. We have not missed it on trips. Again, tough to always take, absolutely guaranteed, but yeah, we do have very, very good chances for
very good chances. Yes.
Just to touch on that one. So a number of the subspecies that you've called out, are they being considered, for full species recognition at this stage, Stu?
Well, I think it's a constantly evolving situation, really. More and more work is being done on these extralimital northern species. So if you look at the nuthatch, for argument's sake, I mean, that looks so different to the European nuthatch. But of course, what it could be is a clinal situation. So as you go further east and north, they could get paler. Whereas northern long-tailed tip seems to me to be fairly consistently white-headed with not much variation in between, i.e. sort of intergrades. So, I mean, I'm not a taxonomist, but I would have said if something, without sounding like a ticker, if something looks and feels different, and also the call is different on a lot of these things, the chances are that there are cryptic species there. But it's a question of how much time and effort is put into finding out more with regard to the taxonomic status. DNA analysis. It's difficult to know, really.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's just more and more work being done on this on the whole. And I think we're definitely seeing a lot more of these subspecies definitely being split off as species around the world. So I think wherever you travel, it's always a good idea if you are quite a keen lister to some degree or like to see new things. It's a nice idea to keep good track of your subspecies. And obviously the trip reports that we do as well, they sort of list those as significant subspecies to keep an eye on, and they'll often be spoken about on tours as well.
And I think Japan is a classic example of a trip where, because you're birding islands, it certainly seems to be that the species that are being discovered, so if you look at the Ryukyu versus the Amami robin with the difference in the forehead, that was a cryptic species that was, you know, it took a long time for people to realize, oh, hang on a minute, they are very different. And I guess that's more the case, certainly if you look at places in the Caribbean and Central America. Island populations being isolated are more likely to be considered as full species. But as I say, I'm not a taxonomist.
Good stuff. Getting around on Japan, are we mostly using train or are we using aircraft?
So we'll take internal flights from Tokyo to various sites. We'll also use the bullet train to go from Tokyo to Nagano, to the snow monkeys and Karuizawa. And then bus or small coach on the islands, traveling, you know, within the islands. So a variety of public transport, but Japan is a very efficient air service, and of course you can, as you know, you can purchase your internal flight tickets as part of the international flight. They've always been very forward thinking with regard to that, and it gives you a certain flexibility of being able to travel within country. But I would think, what is there, 1, 2, 3, I think there's probably 4 or 5 internal flights just off the top. But yeah, Japan is a very efficient place to travel around, certainly. Yeah,
absolutely. Making use of the standards and the quality that's there, definitely, as far as
and very clean. I would add very, very good hygiene on trains and public transport. Absolutely spotless. Incredible, really.
Absolutely. So yeah, a couple of folks just asking about next tours. Do we actually have a trip in January, February 2021? The answer is no. We've postponed that trip. So the next available winter trip to Japan that we're offering is in January, February 2022. We do, however, have our spring Japan trip, which is an 11-day trip, and then you've got a 5-day extension up to Hokkaido. That has got three spaces remaining on it, shall I say. So that is still down to go ahead, and that's in May next year. I'm not sure how much you know about Japanese night heron, Stu.
Not seen it.
I know it's a tough one.
It's a tough one. Yeah.
Really, really tough one. Sorry, just running through over here to see what else there is on. Howard's asking, is there any chance of Stu leading a spring trip to Japan?
Only you can answer that one.
Well, I was about to say, maybe I'll take this one then, Stu. Yeah, I think definitely, without a doubt. I've been chatting to, we've chatted quite a bit actually over the last little while, Stu, and I think definitely 2023, Stu will definitely need some Japan trips. We'll see. Good stuff. Yeah, we must chat. Yeah, either spring or winter or maybe both. So yeah, I think Stu will definitely be leading some Japan trips for us going forward. But yeah, 2022 calendars already sorted and packed and folded up. So yeah, from 2023 definitely some options, so you can look out for that.
Unless there's a private tour, and there's always the tailor-made tour department, and you like Stu and you want to travel with your own friends, it's always an option for you as well.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. Cool. Someone else is also just asking about the hot springs. Do you visit any of the hot springs or use any of them during the trip?
Yes. So most of the hotels in Hokkaido and in the central part of Honshu around Nagano and Karuizawa have the onsen or hot springs built into the hotel, so you can go and have a soak in a boiling hot onsen and have a face like a snow monkey. It's quite bizarre, really, because some of them you can actually sit in the onsen and the other side of the glass is 3 foot deep of snow. It's quite an experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Great stuff. And then just let's have a look here. So a bit of a different one, I guess, in a way, and one that will concern many of us. But Japan and their whaling and what have you. John's saying he's always wanted to visit Japan, but just been worried about their attitude towards whaling. Obviously, a bit of a contentious issue. Yeah, I don't know if you've got any views on that at all, Stu.
Well, I mean, I think for me, really, as a conservationist and ecologist, it surprises me when you look at the regard and the reverence that they have for things like cranes and a lot of the species which they put a tremendous amount of effort and research into conserving. The attitude to whales does seem completely at odds with the Japanese respect for the vast majority of things that you come across in everyday life. And I've heard arguments where the Japanese regard whales as we do cows and sheep. They don't have the same bond with them. I still find it really difficult to get my head around, and it's very upsetting. I guess over the years, hopefully the changing of the generations will see whaling become less prevalent. But it's mainly on the east coast of Honshu, and certainly when we go to Japan in winter, as I say, having done quite a number of trips there myself, I've never seen any evidence of it, but it is normally on the east coast of the mainland, so sort of north of Tokyo. Actually, the main area that the tsunami hit, the sort of Fukushima area, and that northeast coast of the main island. So you certainly don't ever come across it on a birding tour.
Sure.
But it's certainly
thanks for your thoughts.
It's certainly something that I think, it's still at odds with the overall Japanese treatment of species and habitats, which are, on the whole is fantastic. I mean, their nature reserves really do provide amazingly well maintained and preserved habitats.
No, I really appreciate your thoughts on that, Stu. Not an easy topic to,
not an easy one, no.
To talk about and discuss and consider in many ways. And then just finally onto the accommodations. A few folks are just asking about the accommodations that we use in general. Do we ever stay in any typical Japanese inns or use the onsens?
Certainly most of the apart from some of the sort of airport hotels, most of the accommodation in Japan is very, very traditional, with the tatami matting and the nice padded mattress and duvet. I mean, very, very comfortable and certainly high quality by Western standards, but still definitely Japanese. I'd say, apart from airport hotels, which are the same the world over, really.
Sure. Fantastic, Stu. Thanks so much for all of your insights into Japan and what it all entails. I think from a birding point of view, as I say, showcasing a bit of the scenery, a bit of the food, the culture. It's certainly a fascinating place, one that I hope to see one of these days. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
And my pleasure. And I'm so glad that people have enjoyed it.
Thank you. And from all of us from the Rockjumper team, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye all.